Last week in our devotional time, we focused a lot on the idea of anxiety and fear that grips in. And this week, I want to turn a little bit to maybe some practical things that we can do outwardly and things that we can do as followers of Christ and as believers that can make the difference in other people. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about compassion. And compassion is really such a wonderful subject for believers. If you think about Jesus' emotional life, if you think about all the times that Jesus expressed some kind of emotion, if you were to rank all of that kind of emotional side of Jesus, the one predominant emotion that comes through more than anything else is the idea of compassion. And compassion is really literally, if I was going to define it, I would say it's this: it's feeling your way into somebody else's need. If you were to look it up in the dictionary, to be compassionate means that you feel so deeply or viscerally you begin to yearn for, or you begin to enter into the feeling of distress that you have for somebody else's problems, pain, and trouble. This is what Jesus did repeatedly in the Gospels. He showed compassion. He showed compassion to people that were in sin. If you think about how he treated people like the demon-possessed maniac, or he showed compassion to people that were suffering, people that had difficulty. Think about what he did to Mary and Martha in the time of their loss of Lazarus. Or Jesus showed compassion to people that were sick. Think about how he treated the leper. And when Jesus was compassionate, he really did it in two ways. He met physical needs in people's life, and then he also met the inner need that people have, the what I would call the invisible need, this deep sense of disconnect from God. Let me make just a quick application to you. If you're thinking about where you are and you internalize everything about what you're going through during this time that's really unprecedented and in many ways unsettling, if you only focus on you, your problems are going to get bigger. But if you'll turn outward and you'll start focusing on the needs and the problems and the pain of others, I promise you, your problems are going to get smaller, and you're going to see that God has put you in a place to deal with and to help other people. All of our care and compassion for people should be rooted in that same idea. People are material beings. They have physical needs. And we're called of Jesus to meet the physical needs of people. And at the same time, people are immaterial beings. They're not just body that have physical needs, but they're also soul and spirit that have spiritual needs or invisible needs. And so we can use these opportunities to come alongside of people and help them. Let me just give you a quick example. We're doing ministry as a church in ways that we've always done, and we're doing it in new and fresh ways. One of the ways that we've always done ministry is we have, for the last 50 plus years, we have showed really great concern and compassion for the homeless and the addicted and the disconnected from society. Currently, we have 19 men that are staying at our camp down in Keystone Heights. So they'd normally be at a rescue mission, but because they're older and because they're in physical circumstances where they'd be more likely to be exposed to the virus, we put them in camp to give them a little bit more isolation from society and to help them. And what we're doing is we are literally caring for people in a physical way, and we're ministering to them in a spiritual way, because we think both of those things are important. And we're doing it because we're driven by the very compassion of Jesus to try to help people. And they say, well, why is that so important? Because it is what children of God do. It's what followers of Jesus are like. Remember, as a follower of Jesus, the closer you get to Jesus, the more you become like him. There are, we're living in this time when this virus is a communicable disease. In other words, you can get the virus by getting close to somebody that has it, and they can pass that virus on to you. Do you know that God has incommunicable attributes and he has communicable attributes? The incommunicable attributes of God are things that he can't pass to you. His omniscience, or his omnipresence, or his omnipotence. Now, some of you think, well, I've got all those things. Well, you don't have those things, and you can't get those things no matter how close you get to God. But you can get some of the communicable attributes of God, and one of those communicable attributes that God gives is the essence or the nature of compassion. You know what the Bible says about compassion? It's the great difference maker. Jude verse 22, and of some having compassion making a difference. Do you know that in this day and age of the coronavirus, your compassion towards your family, your compassion towards your neighbor, your compassion towards people, think healthcare workers that are dependent upon you to do the right thing, your compassion is going to make a difference in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. That actually brings us to a little story. And it's a story that you find in the Gospel of Mark chapter 9. Jesus is coming down off the Mount of Transfiguration. And while he's been up on the Mount of Transfiguration, remember Elijah and Moses appeared with him, and he had Peter, James, and John. And as they come down off the mountain, one of the multitude comes to Jesus, Mark chapter 9 and verse 17. It says, Master, I've brought unto thee my son, which has a dumb spirit. That is, he's got this physical infirmity. And wheresoever I take him, he teareth him, or the spirit, this demon-possessed boy is taken by this demon, and he foameth and gnasheth his teeth, and he pineth away. And I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. So Jesus, looking at the situation, said, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you, and how long will I suffer you? Bring him unto me. And they brought him unto Jesus, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him and fell on the ground, and he wallowed foaming. And he asked his father, how long is it ago since this came into him? And he said, of a child. So all his life, this child's been dealing with that. And oftentimes they cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion, there's our word, on us and help us. And Jesus said unto him, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And straightway the father of the child cried out and said, with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. And when Jesus saw the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying unto him, thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more in him. And the spirit cried and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, he is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him up, and he arose. And when he was come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could not we cast him out? And he said unto them, this kind came forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. If you and I are going to impact others through this coronavirus, let me just suggest a couple of thoughts about compassion that might help you. Remember, first of all, that compassion requires you to develop real gospel insight. You see, the real issue underneath the problem and pain that people experience is the broken relationship they have with their Heavenly Father. The three disciples that were up on the mountain saw it. They saw the way the world was supposed to work, where Jesus and the Father were in complete harmony with each other. But then they came down off the mountain, and they saw how life really works, where people in total desperation have no place to turn. The sequence in the story is important. The more you understand worship, the more you're transformed by it, by what happened on the mountain. The more that what Jesus did for you impacts you, the more willing you are and the more capable you are to go into the brokenness of the world and help others. Compassion is not just a moral responsibility or action. It is a gospel-driven action on your part to bring the love of Jesus to other people. Compassion not only requires you to develop gospel insight, but compassion can really be messy. You see, when you get involved in the lives of people that have problems and pain, you find sometimes that help is slow coming. If you look at the story, the dad had a faith issue. He wanted compassion. He wanted somebody to feel bad for him. And because of the problem he had with his son, what he really needed was faith. In fact, he acknowledges this when he says, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. You see what happens? He brings his son to Jesus. He loved his son more than anything else. And he realized that he could not protect his son and hold him to himself. He had to give him up to Jesus. And when he does, when he gives him to Jesus, here's what happened. It appears that the child dies. The things that are most important to you in your life must be brought to Jesus. Helping people in pain is helping them to release the things in their life, the bad things, bitterness, regrets, and disappointments. And even the important things that they've made ultimate. Think dreams, desires, relationships, and you release them to God, and you let God fill the hurts of your life with love, grace, and healing. Remember this, the messier it is in the world, the more difficult it is to help people, but the greater God's grace and compassion shines in the backdrop of the problems and pain in people's life. And then remember, finally, compassion will drive you to deepen your relationship with God. So the little boy's healed. He's returned to the Father, completely healed. And the disciples come to Jesus and said, why couldn't we do this? And Jesus said, there's some things in your life that only happen by prayer and fasting. If you're not involved in somebody's life, or if you're not seeing the problem that we're going through with this coronavirus is driving you deeper into your relationship with God, then you're not showing compassion. What you're actually doing is you're putting yourself in a self-protected bubble, and you're insulating yourself from what's really happening in the world. The difference maker in our lives is what will move you to a life of faith, of boldness, of confidence, is seeing that the relationship of the Father to the Son on the mountain, not just on the Mount of Transfiguration, but on Mount Calvary, is what makes all the difference in your life. You see, God is going to pull you in so that he can send you out into the brokenness of people's lives and help them to find the compassion and the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. Let that truth be real in your life today as we seek to impact the world with the gospel of Jesus.